They bolted a metal post straight into my dock. Not just any post, this was a blood-red no fishing sign, stamped with the HOA's official seal driven into my property without a heads-up, without my okay. I was expected to just take it, swallow my pride, and move on. But instead, I gave them a decision. Pay if you want to swim, pay if you want to dock, or don't come at all. What followed turned our peaceful lakeside neighborhood into a battleground, revealing a petty power trip that spiraled completely out of control, dragging all kinds of madness into plain view. This escalated fast. Let me take you through it. Drop a comment if you've ever had a run-in with HOA nonsense. I'd been living a picture-perfect life for a year and a half in this quiet lakeside community up in northern Georgia. Every evening, after work, I'd grab my rod, wander down to my dock, and just exhale. Nothing extravagant, just a simple wooden platform stretching about 30 feet out onto the lake, with a few boat slips and a small shed where I stashed my gear. Over the past year, I'd added a few personal upgrades, a cozy bench to relax on, solar lights that gave it a dreamy glow at dusk, and even a built-in cooler to keep drinks chilled during long fishing sessions in the summer. The guy who lived here before me clearly loved the place too. There were still fishing hooks drilled into the shed's walls, and the whole dock had signs of being well looked after for years. But now it was mine. All of it sat fully within my property line, and it was the perfect place to unwind and toss a line in the water. The lake itself, spring-fed and crystal clear, full of bluegill, catfish, and big-mouth bass. I pulled my personal best, a 6-pound bass, off the end of that dock just 3 months after moving in. No pointless meetings, no drama, no deadlines. I purposely avoided HOA events and the drama that usually tags along with suburban life. When folks tried dragging me into debates over lawn rules or parking tickets, I'd just nod and change the subject. Looking back, maybe that was the first mistake, keeping out of the mess instead of keeping an eye on what was happening. But after 8 hours of solving IT headaches and dealing with cranky clients, the last thing I wanted was neighborhood conflict bleeding into my downtime. Then came Tuesday morning. I stepped outside, coffee in hand, ready for my usual sunrise walk down to the dock. And there it was, a bright red sign mounted right at the edge: no fishing. By order of the HOA, it wasn't some cheap stick-in-the-ground job either. Someone had driven a metal stake deep into the planks of my dock, likely damaging the wood beneath. I literally rubbed my eyes, thinking I had to be seeing things. Did someone actually have the audacity to come onto my property and ban me from fishing on my own dock? The sign was professionally made, too. Not a handwritten note, but a full-blown, laminated, weatherproof notice with big bold letters you could see from the next block. The HOA logo was stamped clearly at the bottom. Someone had spent real money to make this little stunt official. It didn't make sense, not then, and honestly, not now. I stood there frozen, coffee going cold, staring like the dock had just disappeared under my feet. That's when my neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, came hurrying over. She looked rattled, probably in her 60s, retired school administrator, always polite in our occasional chats over the fence. "Reed, I am so sorry," she said. "Last month, Colleen, you know, our HOA president slapped the Johnsons with a $150 fine for leaving their patio furniture out too long. It was out for 36 hours instead of the 24-hour limit. She even took time-stamped photos every few hours to prove it." Her voice dropped to a near whisper. "She's been getting more aggressive. Says she's protecting property values, but I think she's just bored and picking fights." That gut drop feeling hit me. This wasn't about fishing. It was about someone obsessed with control. I wondered if I was blowing it out of proportion, but Mrs. Thompson's expression, part fear, part sympathy, said otherwise. Around 9 a.m., I called the HOA office, assuming this was some mix-up that could be handled with a simple phone call. 20 minutes in, I was being passed around like a hot potato. "President Williams is in meetings," they said. "She call you back. She's very busy with community matters." Classic stalling. The receptionist sounded like she'd already fielded a dozen complaints that morning. Eventually, a different voice came on, this one quieter, nervous. "The sign was a direct order from President Colleen Williams," she said. "I'm sorry, that's all I can say." She sounded like someone might overhear her. That whisper, that fear. Just from telling me that much, that was red flag number 2. At that point, I knew this wasn't some innocent oversight. I didn't have the HOA rulebook in front of me yet, but deep down, I knew they had no legal right. That evening, while I was flipping burgers on the patio, came the knock. Not a friendly one. This was the kind of knock that promises bad news. At the door stood a woman in her 50s, blazer pressed, hair styled, clipboard in hand, arms crossed like she owned the place. "Mr. Reed, I'm Colleen Williams, HOA president," she said with a tone like she was educating a slow child. "You need to understand the fishing ban is for the safety and visual integrity of the community." I kept my tone calm, though. I wanted to match her intensity. "But this is my private marina," I said. "According to my deed, this is on my property. The HOA has jurisdiction over anything that could impact community standards or home values," she replied flatly. "You really should have read the homeowner agreement more carefully before you bought in." And with that, she turned on her heel and walked off, like our entire conversation was already settled in her mind. I wish I could say I handled it perfectly, but come on, who wouldn't feel like blowing up at that smug attitude? I stood there, watching her leave, biting my tongue so hard I nearly tasted blood. Her whole posture screamed power trip, arms on hips, eyes rolling, totally convinced that I should fall in line. From across the street, I saw Richard Patterson, an older neighbor, quiet, keeps to himself, standing in his driveway shaking his head. He'd probably seen it all over the years, and even he looked fed up with what just went down. At least I wasn't alone. That night, I barely got a wink of sleep. I kept picturing Colleen strolling into my backyard again, clipboard ready, claiming the lake belonged to the HOA. I wasn't paranoid, just alert, like I'd suddenly been put on some invisible watch list. As I stared at the ceiling, listening to the water lap gently against the dock, I realized something. This wasn't about fishing. Maybe it never was. It felt like a test. Colleen was probing, seeing how far she could push before someone finally shoved back. And I decided if she could throw my world off balance with one little sign, maybe I could return the favor. I already had an idea. It started with a sign of my own, one she wouldn't expect. I cracked open that HOA welcome packet for the first time since I moved in 18 months ago and started digging. And the deeper I went, the worse it looked. 47 pages of rules, legal jargon, and bureaucratic nonsense. I brewed pot after pot of coffee, my eyes burning from staring at the screen, but I read every single line, every clause, every footnote. The language was typical legal fluff, phrases like "whereas the community desires to maintain harmonious living standards," designed to sound official while saying nothing useful. Honestly, I should have done this homework before I bought the place, but who really does? The realtor focused on the lake access and resale value, not the fine print hiding in the HOA's little black book. Those plastic file tabs from closing day. I figured I'd never need them again. Now they were weapons in a battle plan. Most folks stash those papers in a drawer until something blows up. Well, this blew up. Page after page, I uncovered the true scope of what I'd unknowingly agreed to. Regulations on mailbox height, paint colors, lawn mowing frequency, holiday decor timelines, even approved designs for porch lights. It felt less like a neighborhood and more like a suburban rulebook disguised as a community. And nowhere, not once, was there any specific rule banning fishing at a private dock. I searched everything: fishing, dock, marina, waterfront activity. Nada. The only mentions were vague clauses about preserving aesthetics or avoiding disruptive activities. Catch-all nonsense used when leaders don't actually have the authority they pretend to. Section 4.7 was laughable. Residents must ensure all outdoor activities maintain aesthetic harmony with community values. Seriously, who decides what aesthetic harmony even means? I typed up a 2-page formal request, cited actual regulations, asked for a written legal justification for the fishing ban within 7 business days. Polite but firm, professional, but uncheckable. Should I have let it go? Maybe. But something about Colleen's smugness made me dig in. I even spent an hour designing a protest flyer, Colleen's photo next to the no fishing sign. Headline: Stop the power grab. Color print. Bullet points: HOA overreach, property rights, you name it. Then I stared at it for 10 minutes and shredded the whole thing. No, if I was going to win, I had to do it the right way. Instead of sending a proper explanation, the HOA fired back a single paragraph, something that read like a credit collection threat: failure to comply with community standards may result in legal escalation and financial penalties. Remove all unauthorized signage and cease non-compliant activities immediately to avoid further consequences. They're trying to scare me into giving up. Huge miscalculation. Honestly, did they really believe a few threats would make me cave? The letter doesn't cite a single regulation. No explanation of how fishing supposedly violates community rules. Not even a nod to the fact that the property is mine. Just intimidation wrapped in bureaucratic phrasing. So I call my friend Jake. He's a real estate attorney down in Atlanta. I pose it as a hypothetical. If someone says they can put up signs on my private land for the greater good, could I purely in theory charge them for that so-called public benefit? Jake bursts out laughing so hard he starts choking. That's genius, he says. If they're asserting some kind of authority over your property for community use, then you absolutely have grounds to bill the community for accessing your land. It's entirely legal, just wildly unconventional. Most people wouldn't think to flip the script that way. Jake walks me through the legal logic. If the HOA believes they can govern what happens on my personal property for the benefit of everyone else, then that means the community is profiting from my land and should be paying for that privilege. It's a straightforward concept. Elegant in how obvious it is when you really think about it. He keeps going, clearly energized by the legal implications. What they're doing amounts to a form of eminent domain without any compensation. That's a serious breach of property rights. My proposed countermeasure, he says, isn't just clever. It's protected by the Constitution. I'd simply be asserting my right to decide who uses my land, one of the most fundamental aspects of ownership. He pauses for a moment, probably picturing how this would play out in front of a judge. Just make sure to document everything, Jake advises. Keep every message they send, photograph that sign they stuck on your property. And whatever you do, don't give them any chance to claim you agreed to their demands. He also tells me to check the local going rates for Marina rentals, so I can price fairly if I decide to charge. Makes sense. I spend the next hour looking up rates for private marinas nearby. Turns out, dock rentals go anywhere from $150 to $400 a day depending on features and location. So my $300 fee, pretty average. More than fair, considering my spot is private, lakefront, and well-maintained. That night, I sat down and wrote out every interaction I'd had with Colleen, not just the sign, other little things too. The look she gave me when I declined to join the HOA newsletter group last month, how her car slows near my dock on weekends. Maybe I was reading too much into it, or maybe she'd been setting this up for a while. Look, I'm not trying to squeeze money out of my neighbors or cause chaos. I just want to fish after work without hassle. But Colleen's aggressive tone in that letter paired with her smug expression when she gave me the first warning, something in me snapped. Some fights are worth picking, especially when someone's clearly misusing their position. The old me probably would have just moved to a public lake and muttered complaints under my breath. But after seeing Colleen throw her weight around with other families, hearing how that poor secretary sounded on the phone, realizing how she probably steamrolls everyone in this neighborhood. No more. That same night, I ordered a custom sign. Professionally made, looked completely official. Wording that would either resolve this once and for all or light a fuse neither of us was ready for. Jake called it brilliant. I wasn't so sure. Something told me Colleen was no rookie when it came to power games. She likely had backup moves. At exactly 6 a.m., I'm outside, installing my sign right next to theirs. The air is crisp, the lake's surface perfectly still. I haven't felt this sharp in months. My sign reads, "Notice, private marina facility. CHOA members will be charged $300 per use for swimming, docking, or recreational activity. Payment due upon use. Legal enforcement to follow." I step back and take in the view. Two signs staring each other down like soldiers before a skirmish. Looking back, I'm still amazed I went through with it. Part of me expected to chicken out, but there I was, planting a flag. Literally, the $300 wasn't a guess. I did my research. That's what premium, private docks charge per day. Within an hour, neighbors start showing up. I watch from my kitchen as they read my sign, then theirs, then mine again. Faces go from puzzled to amused. Mrs. Thompson even gives me a thumbs up and yells, "Nice move, Reed," but not everyone's impressed. A guy from the corner house shakes his head, clearly annoyed. "This is exactly the kind of drama that ruins neighborhoods," he mutters. "We need unity, not a sign war." Maybe I was imagining things, but it felt like the whole neighborhood was lining up behind one side or the other. By 8 a.m., a full-on crowd has gathered at the dock. People snapping photos, debating loudly about private rights versus shared rules. Mrs. Thompson keeps me updated. Colleen's been HOA president for 3 years, and it's gone to her head, she says. She used to be reasonable, but since her husband left last year, she's been running this place like a mini dictatorship. The fishing ban, apparently not even voted on, she made the decision unilaterally. That explained a lot. An empty nest divorcee trying to fill a void by clamping down on everything and everyone. She fined the Williams family for planting a vegetable garden too close to the street, Mrs. Thompson adds. When they pointed out that gardens aren't even mentioned in the rules, she threatened to call a meeting just to ban their tomatoes. It would have been laughable if it weren't so destructive. She tells me about other families, too. The Henderson kids chalked on their own driveway got cited for creating unauthorized temporary signage. The elderly couple on Maple Street received a violation notice for flying an American flag that wasn't the exact regulation size. They'd flown the same one for 2 decades. Now it's suddenly a problem. Everyone's afraid to do anything anymore, Mrs. Thompson whispers. It's like we're in some kind of surveillance state where neighbors report each other for breathing wrong. By mid-morning, a new rumor spreads that the Marina used to be a shared access point before it was accidentally privatized during a title change. Total nonsense, but crafty. That's when I knew Colleen wasn't just bluffing. She was laying a foundation, a storyline. I had to counter before her version stuck. By noon, someone had posted pictures of the sign standoff in our community group. Within minutes, the comments explode. Wait, is this even legal? Reed's got guts. The HOA has gone too far this time. This could set a scary precedent. I stayed quiet. Let the debate swirl without my input. Sometimes saying nothing speaks volumes. My phone, however, wouldn't shut up. Calls, texts from neighbors I barely knew, and even people from other neighborhoods who'd somehow caught wind. Most calls were supportive. Turns out, Colleen's rubbed a lot of folks the wrong way. One elderly man told me she fined him $200 for having a mailbox painted the wrong shade of blue. They had to repaint it 3 times before she signed off. Another neighbor got cited for leaving garbage cans out more than 2 hours after collection. I ignored most of the calls. But I couldn't help wondering, how does a neighborhood feud go viral so fast? Finally, around 3 p.m., I get a call from Colleen herself. I let it ring 4 times before picking up. What do you think you're doing? She barks. Her voice is shaking, not from fear, but fury. The calm, professional act from before, gone. I'm following your logic, I reply. Calmly, if the HOA can post regulatory signage on private property for the sake of the community, then I can charge the community for using that same property. Nobody uses that marina, she snaps. So you're admitting it's mine and nobody from the neighborhood actually accesses it. Silence. I can practically hear the gears grinding in her head. Just so we're clear, I continue. I've got the deed, the county map, and 2 decades worth of tax receipts. That marina isn't shared. It's mine right down to the last plank. She hangs up. No goodbye. Just a click and silence. I stared at my phone. Who just hangs up mid-dispute over property rights? By evening, the neighborhood was split. Half thought I was a hero standing up to HOA tyranny. The other half viewed me as a troublemaker overreacting to a minor issue. Perfect. That kind of tension forces movement. Social media debates now stretched across 3 neighborhood groups and spilled onto public forums. Everyone was talking about property rights, regulations, and whether I'd gone too far or not far enough. That evening, a formal notice was taped to my door. Emergency HOA meeting, mandatory attendance Thursday, 7 p.m. I stared at the paper, unsure if I'd just claimed a small win or triggered a battle I wasn't ready for. But if this was going to be a fight, I'd come prepared. Signs were only my opening move. Thursday night, the community center is jam-packed. I've never seen a turnout like this. Even folks who haven't shown up in years came out of the woodwork. Rows of chairs stretch to the back wall. People are standing along the sides. The AC can barely keep up. The tension's so thick, you can feel it. Colleen sits at the front, looking exactly how I expected, calm, cold, clipboard in hand like it's a weapon. Every head turns as I walk in and take a seat in the back row. I wasn't sure if I was walking into a public hanging or a standing ovation, but I figured I'd find out soon enough. The meeting kicks off with the usual housekeeping, budget summaries, updates on landscaping contracts, and the schedule for mailbox maintenance. Colleen runs through it all with practiced efficiency, but there's tension in how she grips the gavel just a bit too tightly. When the treasurer presents the report, something noteworthy jumps out. The HOA has already spent over $8,000 this year on enforcement consulting, basically hiring attorneys to pressure residents into following the rules. That kind of money could have gone toward real improvements, maybe upgrading the playground or fixing the roads. Still, no one's really here for the routine. You can feel it in the room. People are fidgeting with their phones, whispering quietly, and every so often, glancing in my direction. It's obvious some neighbors have already chosen their sides. There's a group up front nodding in sync with everything Colleen says, while folks in the back send scowling looks toward the board. Then, a retired teacher who's lived in the neighborhood for 15 years rises from her chair. "We can't just let residents post any signs wherever they please," she says firmly. "There must be order, standards, structure, or we'll end up with chaos." A few people nod along. Honestly, her argument makes sense, which only complicates things for me. I find myself thinking maybe I really am the problem here. Maybe I should have just picked another spot to fish and avoided this entire headache. But then she adds, what comes next? Political signs, commercial ads, signs promoting inappropriate activities. The way she stresses inappropriate activities makes it sound like I'm running an underground casino rather than quietly fishing on my own dock. But just as I begin to question myself, Colleen launches into her presentation, and all my uncertainty vanishes. For the next 10 minutes, she walks the room through slides about community standards, property values, and the dangers of residents acting on their own, defying the HOA. Her delivery is smooth, confident, rational, and polished. She paints me as some sort of rogue homeowner challenging the legitimacy of the HOA. Her slideshow features pictures of my marina, quotes from HOA guidelines, and even charts comparing property values in nearby areas. I sit there, silent, letting her lay it all out. I should have seen it coming how she'd frame me as the bad guy, but hearing it out loud still catches me off guard. When she finishes, about a third of the room claps. Then it's my turn. I get up, manila folder in hand, and make my way to the front. It feels like the longest walk of my life, each step echoing in the quiet room. "Thank you, Colleen," I say calmly. "I'd like to correct a few factual inaccuracies and offer some legal clarification." I speak clearly, making eye contact with residents across the room. Let's begin with the HOA regulation used to justify banning fishing at my marina. Section 4.7, which refers to maintaining community standards. Now, if fishing violates that clause, then so should swimming, docking, or any recreational use of that marina right. Soft murmurs ripple through the room. People are tracking the logic. Some nod. Others furrow their brows, realizing what that means. Next, I continue, if the HOA can post regulatory signs on my private property for the supposed benefit of the community, then I also have the legal right to charge for that benefit. That's standard property law. Suddenly, Richard Patterson, who hadn't said a word all evening, speaks up from the middle of the room. "Colleen, let me ask plainly, are you certain a marina falls under HOA jurisdiction?" Richard, a retired attorney with for decades of experience, commands attention when he talks. Colleen responds confidently, "Absolutely. All waterfront spaces are governed by HOA authority, per our bylaws." The room buzzes. That can't be true. I bought my house because that dock was private. Some neighbors look bewildered, others shake their heads. Time for the twist. "Here's the map stamped by the county," I say, laying out documents across the presentation table. "Anyone who still doubts it can take it up with the assessor's office." The official stamps and signatures are clearly visible. The room falls so silent. Even the hum of the AC seems to fade, or maybe I've just tuned it out. Richard walks forward, adjusting his glasses, and studies the documents with care. "These appear to be legitimate county records, properly certified," he says. "Colleen, it seems we may have made a serious mistake." And then I saw it, the shift. You could see it in everyone's faces, a flicker of recognition that maybe, just maybe, the HOA had overstepped. Colleen's loyalists started shrinking into their chairs. Neighbors who hadn't said a word before now looked at me like I'd finally made sense. It wasn't just the mood, it was momentum. The energy in the room pivoted, drifting away from her. A quiet voice from the back, Mrs. Thompson, speaks up. So Reed was right all along, Colleen, visibly flustered, replies, even if the marina is technically private, the HOA still has the right to regulate activities that impact community appearance and property values. Richard stands up with the quiet authority of someone who's been in court more times than he can count. No, Colleen, if that dock is indeed private, then we have no legal authority over it. We need to remove the sign immediately and issue a formal apology. The applause begins hesitantly, then quickly builds. People rise to their feet. Some cheer, all in favor of rescinding the HOA's fishing ban and issuing an apology to Reed. Hands start going up, some fast and defiant, others slow and uncertain. The last hand belongs to a soft-spoken woman 3 doors down who never says a word at meetings. That seals it. 28-6. Colleen lowers her clipboard like a flag, surrendering in battle. Her face is flushed, and her grip on the pen is white-knuckled. As I walked back to my car, I expected to feel triumphant. But the look Colleen gave me as I passed her table said it all. She wasn't going to let this go. I recognized that kind of personality. She wouldn't take a public defeat lightly. She'd come back swinging. So I got ready. The next morning, I went to the hardware store to buy some basic security equipment. Nothing fancy, just enough to monitor my property and catch whatever move she might try next. I installed a simple wireless camera system with night vision, aimed to cover every angle of the marina. It only cost me $89, but it sent motion alerts straight to my phone and backed everything up to the cloud. Maybe I was being overly cautious, or maybe I just knew better. Then I got creative. I coated my sign in invisible UV powder, the kind used to catch package thieves. Totally harmless, but glows bright purple under a black light. You can buy it online for $20. Anyone who touches the sign gets marked, can't wash it off for weeks. 2 nights later, at exactly 2:47 a.m., the alert came through. I only needed a glance. He was back, tools in hand, moving like he'd done this before. I recognized him from previous neighborhood jobs. Older guy, probably just following orders, but still committing a crime on camera. I couldn't believe she'd actually sent someone in the dead of night to tamper with my sign. Seriously, this is what we've come to. The footage is crystal clear. You see him take down my sign and replace it with a new one that reads, "No fishing, no swimming, no docking, HOA property only. Violators will be prosecuted." It's perfect. They're still claiming ownership over my marina even after county records proved otherwise. Part of me wanted to run outside and confront him, but the smarter part said let it play out. Sometimes you have to give people enough rope to hang themselves. At 8 a.m. sharp, I called the police. Someone had trespassed on private property and destroyed my legally posted sign. And I had it all on video. At first, the dispatcher sounded unconvinced, like it was just another neighborhood spat. But once I mentioned the footage and property damage, her tone shifted. A police officer arrived within half an hour, a professional woman in her 30s who took the situation seriously from the start. I showed her the footage. Clear as day. "This looks like a clear case of trespassing and vandalism," she said. "Would you like to press charges?" "Absolutely." I had documentation proving ownership and videos showing deliberate damage. Within the hour, both Colleen and the contractor showed up alongside the officer. Colleen immediately tried to spin it. "Officer, this is clearly a community matter best resolved through HOA channels, not criminal action." The officer shut that down immediately. "Ma'am, trespassing and property damage are crimes regardless of internal community politics. Mr. Reed has both video and legal documentation." The contractor looked nervous. Colleen looked furious, but like she still thought she had a trick up her sleeve. Then I brought out the UV flashlight, the kind from CSI shows. "Officer, I also have physical evidence that proves he handled the original sign." "Sir, would you show us your hands?" Under the light, his palms lit up purple, bright and unmistakable. The UV powder had done its job. The guy cracked immediately. "Colleen told me to do it. Said the signs were illegal and needed to be replaced per HOA orders." "I didn't know it was a crime." Colleen turned pale. "I never said that. He must have misunderstood." Before she could continue, I tapped play on my phone. Her voice echoed loud. "Do it after dark so no one sees you. Make sure there's no evidence." The officer's expression tightened. "So you instructed someone to enter private property without authorization?" Colleen stammered. I didn't flinch. And behind me, A crowd of neighbors gathered, phones raised, recording everything. This wasn't a dispute anymore. It was a public reckoning. Colleen looked like she wanted to vanish. The contractor looked ready to collapse. Richard Patterson walked over from across the street, calm and steady. "Officer, I saw someone on Reed's dock around 3 a.m. I figured it was authorized maintenance and didn't intervene." His word carried weight. Everyone knew it. The evidence was overwhelming: video, audio, physical proof, and a witness. "Honestly, I've seen murder trials with less." Then the officer turned to Colleen. "Do you have documentation confirming the HOA's authority over this marina?" Colleen stammered something about bylaws and aesthetic rules, but couldn't produce anything concrete. "And you directed this contractor to remove Mr. Reed's sign?" With the recording, denial was pointless. "Ma'am, you're under arrest for criminal trespassing and property damage conspiracy." The cuffs clicked into place, soft and final, just like the end of her reign. A neighbor from across the street shamelessly live-streamed the whole thing. The title read, "HOA President Busted for Vandalism." You'll never guess why. Within minutes, it had racked up over 3,000 views. Watching her get handcuffed in broad daylight beneath the neighbors' stares should have felt like justice finally served. Instead, it just felt over. She'd thrown away everything over a fishing sign. As the officer pulled out his citation book and began jotting down official charges, I knew this was a turning point. Either Colleen's reign of intimidation was truly finished, or I'd just become the guy who ruined someone's life over a neighborhood spat. Sure, she went down hard, but power rarely vanishes. It reorganizes, armed with footage, audio recordings, UV powder, and eyewitness accounts. The case was rock solid. She was formally accused of conspiring to trespass, orchestrating property damage, and filing bogus police reports. She claimed the contractor acted on his own until the audio proved otherwise. He, too, was charged with trespassing and vandalism, but his willingness to cooperate earned him a lighter outcome, a fine and community service. The board immediately called an emergency meeting, delicately referring to the situation as a leadership transition. With Richard Patterson stepping in as interim moderator, a vote was held. The result, 31 for removal, only 3 in her favor. I didn't know if I felt justified or sorry for her, but the relief on everyone's faces made it clear what the neighborhood needed. Richard was unanimously named interim president. His first official act, a public apology directed at me and a formal acknowledgement of my property rights recorded in the HOA's official minutes. That apology was read aloud at the next community meeting and later posted on the neighborhood's website. To avoid a public trial, Colleen pleaded guilty. Her sentence, a $5,000 fine, 40 hours of community service, and a 5-year ban from holding any HOA position. No jail time, but the embarrassment hit deeper than any court-ordered punishment. And the humiliation didn't stop there. Her name was trending on local news sites for days. Clips of her getting arrested circulated online, captioned with snarky overlays like "Bow down to your HOA queen." She didn't just lose her title, she lost her ability to blend in. The woman who once ruled through fear had become a living cautionary tale. Looking back, a part of me almost feels bad about how thoroughly it all unraveled. Almost, but then I remember the look on Mrs. Thompson's face and all the other neighbors she'd harassed. Both the illegal no fishing sign and the forged replacement property label were officially taken down in a quiet, symbolic ceremony. My marina returned to what it once was, calm and undisturbed. The water looked clearer, the sunset seemed brighter. Maybe it was all in my head, but everything felt lighter without that aggressive red sign glaring at me every morning. After neighborhood events, families began approaching me. "Thanks for standing up to her," they'd say. "We were too scared to speak out, but seeing you do it gave us courage." Mrs. Thompson handed me a plate of cookies and simply said, "Took guts." That meant more than a dozen speeches ever could. I'm not sure why their approval mattered so much, but it did. Maybe because facing down a bully is terrifying, and knowing you're not alone makes it a little less so. Under Richard's leadership, the HOA actually became functional. Meetings became voluntary, constructive, and centered around real issues like road upkeep and neighborhood lighting, not nitpicky rule enforcement. New rules had to address safety, not style preferences. All decisions required advance notice, open discussion, and a community vote. No more surprise fines. No more rules invented mid-penalty. No more power trips disguised as policy. I went from avoiding HOA involvement like the plague to becoming the person neighbors came to for advice on navigating red tape. Richard would often ask me, "Reed, does this sound fair or does it sound like something Colleen would have slipped through?" The change was unmistakable. People stopped avoiding each other. Questions got asked, even the hard ones. Meetings felt like true forums, not INQUISITINS. At the time, I didn't understand how one change could make such a huge impact, but sometimes, removing just one toxic person is enough to reset the whole system. That first quiet evening back at the Marina, I cast my line and watched the sky turn gold. No drama, no threats, no one lurking with a clipboard. And the base were biting again, like they could sense the shift. Neighbors who used to ignore me now smile and wave, not because I'm a local hero, but because I proved that you can stand your ground without becoming hostile. Word spread through social media and local circles. Messages started pouring in. People from other neighborhoods were reaching out. One message from Maria Anderson in Riverside County read, "Our HOA wants to ban front yard vegetable gardens for being aesthetic nuisances. I don't know what to do. Can you help?" Apparently, my little stand had started a movement. The first thing I always tell people, double check who owns the land in question, look it up in county records. Never take the HOA's word for it. More messages followed. A retired teacher in Nevada battling flower pot restrictions. A young dad in Oregon told to remove a basketball hoop from his driveway. A grandmother in Texas in trouble for feeding birds. Different details. Same story. Someone with a sliver of power decides their personal tastes are the law. It's alarming how quickly HOAs morph into petty dictatorships when the wrong person takes charge. The psychology is always the same. Someone powerless in real life grabbing at control wherever they can get it. I've started a spreadsheet tracking violations, legal precedents, and effective ways to push back. It's disturbingly fascinating. Most rules aren't about safety, they're about control. I'm no lawyer, but I've learned this. Proper documentation beats intimidation every time. Know your boundaries, read your HOA bylaws, and never give up rights you legally hold just because someone tries to scare you into compliance. Thanks to the internet, homeowners no longer have to suffer in silence. Strategies can now be shared, coalitions formed, and legal wins replicated across neighborhoods. I didn't set out to become an informal HOA advocate, but helping people fight back feels right. Each win sparks others. People start documenting, organizing, uniting. The days of unchecked HOA bullying are fading. Now, when someone tries to impose nonsense rules, residents can search, prepare, and fight smart. 6 months later, I'm at a local cafe, helping 3 families via message. When I hear a voice behind me, I hear you've become some kind of HOA guru. I turn, it's Colleen. She looks different. Not in appearance, but in presence. That intimidating aura, gone. She seems small, almost fragile, dressed casually, quiet. "I never meant for it to get that far," she says, sitting without asking. She seems deflated, like the consequences hollowed her out. But I let her speak. After I left the bank, the HOA was the only place I felt needed. People listened. There was honesty in that. Vulnerability, even. I could have stayed angry, reminded her of everything she did, but instead, I just felt drained. The fire that got me through those months of conflict had simmered down to something like sympathy. "You had real power, Colleen," I told her. "You could have made things better. Instead, you made people afraid." She nodded. No excuses, no denial, just regret. "I understand that now." "I'm sorry." I accepted the apology, but if you ever end up in a position of authority again, remember what it felt like to be on the other side of it. She left quietly, and I realized something. The goal isn't just to beat the bully. It's to make sure they understand why they were wrong so they don't do it again. Sometimes, the real win is helping someone grow. To date, I've helped 14 families in 9 states take on unfair HOA policies, always as a fellow homeowner, never pretending to be a legal expert. The strategy is simple: document everything. Check your property rights. Stay calm. Don't give in to fear. Most of these bullies fold the moment they're challenged properly. Eventually, I agreed to join the HOA board, but on strict terms: transparent meetings, no surprise policies, and a fair appeals system. True community leadership requires participation, not just complaints. Now, our HOA is seen as a model. Property values are up, complaints are down. Meetings are solutions-focused, and neighbors genuinely enjoy each other's company. On a beautiful Sunday evening, I'm by the Marina, teaching a neighbor's 9-year-old daughter how to cast a line. Her parents sit nearby, smiling. The kid's natural, her first cast goes farther than most adults manage. She turns to me, serious-faced. "Mr. Reed, why was that lady so mean about fishing?" I smile. Some people think power means telling others what they can't do. But real power means helping people do what makes them happy, as long as it's not hurting anyone. She nods. Eyes already back on the water, captivated by a fish jumping near the far bank. Watching her, I finally understood what this whole journey meant. Most people tolerate being pushed around because standing up feels too risky. But every once in a while, pushing back doesn't just change your life, it changes the lives of everyone watching who thought they were alone. Right now, my phone's lighting up for new messages from folks facing HOA trouble, a dinner invite from neighbors, and a photo from Maria, her veggie garden thriving, proudly marked with a sign: "Community beauty through diversity." Not bad for someone who just wanted to fish in peace. So I built a real guide. Not just how to fight back, but how to create a neighborhood where no one needs to. And maybe that's what sticks with me most. I never meant to be an example, I just wanted peace. But that one push against overreach, it gave others permission to draw their own lines, too. Turns out, all it takes is one person with proof, persistence, and backbone to show a community how to stand up for itself. Still reading? I'd love to know, have you ever dealt with a Colleen? Share your story below. And if this one made you nod, smile, or want to throw something, tap that little thanks button to support the channel. Appreciate you hanging out. Catch you in the next one.